Welcome back to the Megacast, our live daily TV, radio, and streaming show looking into all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Learn more about our program on our website, civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll find more information on all of our partnering stations across the Great Lakes State, including My Michigan TV, and find all of our full shows and each individual interview on demand. civiccentertv.com/megacast is the place to go for all of that. Well, in our economic times that we're in right now, with inflation certainly impacting the market and impacting your pocketbook on a daily basis, the fluctuation of the markets affecting your investments. What should you be doing if you're already in retirement and it's affecting your budget for the remainder of your lifetime, or if you're getting ready for retirement, or if you're just starting out and planning for retirement down the road? Here to help us with some things we can do in the market to help circumvent some of these modern day problems and prepare for a more fruitful future is Jason Brown from the Brown Report. Jason, thank you so much for joining us today.
Tyler, thanks for having me. Always good to be here.
Yeah, good to have you on as well. It's an important topic we have on the docket today for people as we're continuing through some interesting financial times here, not only in the U.S., but worldwide. A lot of people worried about their pocketbooks right now, but also worried about their retirement, as saving for retirement on a surface level, very similar to what it's been in generations past, but the mechanics of it have really changed. What are some of those key differences that we're noticing in our modern society, especially of late, given the circumstances that we're in? And how do those changes implicate how we should be approaching saving for retirement?
So I think some of the biggest changes that most people may be seeing right now are affecting people that are already in retirement and maybe not necessarily people that are going into retirement, and that's inflation. And so if you budgeted or planned your retirement and said, hey, I'm going to live off X amount of dollars every single month, and this is how much I'm going to withdraw from my investment account. Well, if you think about the pandemic took stocks to like an all-time high, and now they've come back down. But technically, you haven't really lost any money because they soared so much during the pandemic with all the money that came in from the government. So from that standpoint, your account should be doing okay, even though lately the market has been down. On average, you're probably about even or a little up. But the problem is the things that you pay for every day, like food, gas, maybe if you had to buy a new car while you're already in retirement, those things are more expensive. And so it's pulling out more money than you might have budgeted for when you went into retirement. Now, if you're not in retirement, there's still time for the prices and different things like that to come down. But I think the people who are affected the most are the ones who are already in retirement, and these inflated numbers are kind of throwing off their monthly budget.
So let's talk more about that. Let's talk more about the people that are currently experiencing that. They're in retirement, they've saved, they've gone through their entire career, they got ready for retirement. It's an exciting time. You got some freedom behind you to live out the later years of your life as you so choose without the constraints of work. And now you're in the situation where our economy has kind of thrown a monkey wrench into all of that. And now you got to either rebudget, maybe consider taking on some part-time work to make ends meet. And in terms of what can be done with the money that you have saved and what you have in pocket month to month, maybe through Social Security or through a pension or something like that, what are your suggestions in terms of them approaching, maybe bridging some of those gaps through the markets? Is that something that you would suggest being a potential option for them, or should they be looking at some other safer options to bolster them over time?
So there's always an opportunity to jump in the market and kind of take control of your financial future yourself. The question really is, do you have some disposable income while you're in retirement that you could potentially go and make a better return than what you're getting from your retirement account? And then do you know how to do that? If not, I think it's important to realize that inflation doesn't last forever, or higher prices don't last forever. And so maybe you have to cut back on traveling. Maybe you have to maybe not get the car or all the options on the car that you wanted. But that's okay. That may only be for a short period of time. And even if you have to pick up a second job, or as they call it, a side hustle, I know it probably sounds weird to be going into a side hustle as you're in retirement. But there's so many things you could do, like driving Uber, driving Lyft, doing Uber Eats, to make some extra money to bridge that gap if you need to. The last thing you would want to do, though, is put yourself in harm's way and risk money that maybe is already earmarked for retirement and that you could potentially lose trying to make more money, versus just managing your lifestyle to conform to the new inflated prices, at least for this short period of time.
Kind of in that in between zone too, between people that are investing now, getting ready for their retirement years and years down the line, and those that are in retirement, maybe struggling in some cases to make ends meet or to stay on budget given the state of inflation. Are those people that are on the cusp of retirement? They've been planning for this for years. They're coming up on that, that date or that set of dates that they had in mind for when they were going to call it a career and ride off into the sunset into retirement. Obviously, one way to change those plans and adjust for what's going on in the economy is to push that date forward. But for those individuals, how should they be approaching the market differently right now than those that are already in retirement to, maybe stay on that schedule or prepare themselves for whatever situation the economy might be in when they do reach that date, if they've already made that decision and have punched through to their retirement on a given time.
So, like you said, they can obviously push the date back. That's probably the natural, easiest thing to do is push the date back. The other thing they could do is they can meet with, hopefully they've met with some type of financial advisor or ran their retirement through some type of financial calculator. And they might realize that maybe they need to put more money away now to still hit that date. And so it's like, if I, was putting 20% of my income away, maybe they need to increase it to 25% or 30%. And they can do that while they're still working so that they don't have to move back their date. That's always one option. And then the other thing is if they move back their date, it's not really the end of the world. Because if you think about how stocks have sold off, there's an opportunity right now to pick up some really great companies and some really great investments at a really good price. And so if you're able to pour more money into the market, into the right stocks or sectors and industries, and then push your retirement back a year, 2 years, whatever the case may be, is a good chance that you'll have a bigger and better retirement nest egg because you're able to pick up on some great companies at low prices versus if you're ready to retire in the next 6 to 12 months, you're pulling money out as the market has come off of its high. So you're not pulling money out at the highest price, you're pulling back off the lower price. But if you can be buying at the lower price and wait for it to turn around and go back higher, because statistics shows over time you average about 11 to 13% return in the market. So that means if you can wait another year or 2 year, the money that you're putting in now could earn potentially 13% 1 to 2 years in a row, which would be a good 26% increase in your retirement account. And so those are things to think about. Do I put more money in and push the date back so that I can take advantage of the market pullback? Or do I put more money in now to hopefully bolster the return, the return in the short term, or at least offset the inflation in the short term to still allow me to come out when I wanted to come out?
More information from Jason and the Brown Report, as well as resources, including his podcast, the Money Markets and Mindset podcast, which you can find on various podcasting networks, including Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and on Spotify. Can be found thebrownreport.com. As of course, we're joined by Jason Brown, stock market coach and options trader, on today's edition of the Megacast. When people are thinking about their investments, they're thinking about right now, they're thinking about their retirement and the savings given the economy and the state that we're in. A lot of people are concerned because of the impact of inflation in their daily life right now, and they're looking for safety. Is and it's a tough question because, as we've always talked about, it's about knowing what you're doing and having some of that back knowledge before you go into it. But is there a sense of safety, in your opinion, going into the stock market in this sort of a time to really bolster your retirement and get that ready for when the market ultimately does adjust itself back to some semblance of normality or positivity at the very least?
Well, I think what's safe about investing right now is you're not buying at the all-time highs. So could you imagine if you bought 6 months ago or last year at the all-time highs? A lot of stocks have been cut in half, so 50%. And so I think psychologically, we think the best time to buy stocks is when they're going up. But the problem with that is nothing goes up forever. So if you're buying things at the all-time high, it's more likely that you have room to fall, for the stocks to fall and you have room to lose money. So in my opinion, and it's just my opinion, when things are down and things are kind of horrible, I think Warren Buffett coined the quote, when others are fearful, be greedy. And so when everyone's talking about recession and inflation and it's a bad time to invest, it's technically, if you really clear the noise, it's really a good time to invest. It's a good time to get things at such a low price. Because if you look at Amazon, who's been, valuation's been cut in half, you look at Google, who's been cut in half. I'll just take those two companies. It's unlikely that they're going to get cut in half again. It's unlikely that they're going to lose 75% of their value. That's what would have to happen for them to get cut in half again. It's also unlikely that these companies are going to go to zero. So sometimes we think, I don't want to lose all my money. It's like, well, that would mean Amazon would have to go out of business. Google would have to go out of business. Tesla would have to stop selling electric cars, and we all go back to gas cars. So when you think about it logically, technically now is the best time to buy because there's less room to fall and more room to go higher once we get past this whole inflationary period. So I think if we think about it like that, there is safety in investing right now, whether you're doing individual stocks or you're doing sectors. So you maybe don't want to get caught with an individual stock. You can look at the XLK, which is the technology sector, which will have Apple, Facebook, Google, Amazon lumped into it. And I think lastly, the other thing that people have to think about is retirement is a game plan. And the game plan doesn't really change in the next 30 to 60 days because the market's up or down. I want people who are listening to this, whether they're in retirement or they're going into retirement, whatever the situation is, it's a result of the planning that you did 15, 10, 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. And so now is the time, if you aren't in retirement, you should be saying, what happens if in 15 years when I do retire, if inflation is back, if things cost higher, and you should be baking that into your retirement plan. But now that inflation is here, layoffs are here, it's not too many levers that you can pull and just change things on a dime and just modify 30 years of planning in 6 to 12 months. So just keep that in mind as well. And sometimes the best modification is just modifying your lifestyle if you didn't bake inflation or some type of rainy day scenario into your retirement. And it's not the end of the world. As long as you got your health, your family, um, everything is okay. The news will have you thinking like the world is over, but you're still alive. You have your health, you have your friends and family, and you have some money in retirement. You just might not have enough to do all the things that you want to do, but that's okay.
Yeah, you make some adjustments, you get informed, you learn more information, and you make decisions and those adjustments with informed opinions and some information from experts behind it. Jason, appreciate your time. I want to give you another couple minutes to talk about anything else that you believe would be important for our audience to be keeping in consideration right now on the retirement topic, on investing, on the markets, or anything else we should be keeping an eye on.
One of the things I would say for people who are thinking about retirement, sometimes I think millennials think like retirement's so far away. I don't have to think about that right now. But one of the things that everyone should be doing is getting a retirement calculator. You could Google them, there's probably free ones online. But really, the question you have to ask yourself is what type of lifestyle do I want to have in retirement? Meaning, how much is my house? How much is my car? Or even if your house is paid off, how much do I want to set aside for repairs? Because you might need a new roof. How much do I want to spend on vacations? How much do I want to spend traveling? And you want to bake that in and say, okay, this is how much I need in retirement every single month. And then what lump sum of money do I need to have and what type of return do I need to make? So let's say you need $3 million dollars and you need to make 3% off that. It'll tell you this is how much you can withdraw every month with $3 million dollars making 3%. And it's either going to match the lifestyle you want or it's not going to match the lifestyle you want. But it'll let you know what target you're aiming for and gunning for over the next 15, 20, and 30 years to live that comfortable life in retirement. So I think we should be thinking about it now, even if we feel like it's, so far away, 15, 20, 30 years away.
Good place to start with some healthy advice and information is at thebrownreport.com, as well as listening to Jason on the Money Markets and Mindset podcast on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, and more. Okay. Again, more information, thebrownreport.com. Jason, thank you so much for joining us.
Tyler, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Having you on, Jason. Thebrownreport.com is where you can go for more information and access to his podcast, as well as many of the resources he provides in his stock market coaching, as well as options trading coaching as well. We'll take a break here on the Megacast. On the other side, we'll talk to Michael Greiner from Oakland University, get some more context on the market, which will certainly impact your pocketbook as well as your retirement investments, as we've just talked about. You're watching and listening to the Megacast.
Let's savor these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
My Michigan TV is streaming everywhere on Apple TV, Roku, Fire TV, and more smart TV apps. My Michigan TV is on your phone too. Take us with you wherever you go. Just search for My Michigan TV on your favorite app store or visit mymitv.com. All Michigan, streaming everywhere. My Michigan TV.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live daily TV, radio, and streaming show looking into all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Learn more about our program on our website, civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll find more information on all of our partnering stations across the state and find all of our full shows and individual interviews on demand as well. civiccentertv.com/megacast. Joining us now for our weekly economics and market talk from Oakland University is an assistant professor of management in their School of Business Administration. Professor Michael Greiner joins us now on the Megacast. Michael, thanks for being with us again.
It's great to be back. Happy snowy Friday.
Yes, very snowy Friday, a much longer commute for those going in this morning and those going home. Stay safe out there on the roads as always. But what's the big impact right now, Michael, even beyond the snow outside in our pocketbooks continues to be inflation. At this moment in time, Michael, what is going on with inflation? And are we at a point where we could say potentially it's reached its peak?
Yeah, we actually got some good news about inflation last week, if you can believe it. I mean, after so many months of just relentless bad news, we finally saw some bright spots. And what it is we got news that for the second month in a row, the producer's price index has actually gone down. Now, the producer's price index, that basically tells you how much the producers, the manufacturers of goods and the people who are producing different services are charging their wholesalers, like the retailers and that type of thing. It's not talking about how much consumers are paying, but essentially how much is being paid in the business-to-business transactions. And in that case, that can be a really good kind of long-term indication because of the fact that, ultimately, those costs that are being paid by the middle people will be passed on to consumers. So, and in fact, we have seen a bit of a slowdown with the consumer's price index as well. So it seems like there's a lot of good evidence now that that inflation is finally starting to slow down. And that's really good news for everybody. That being said, the Fed has stepped in and said, well, don't get too excited. Because the problem that we've seen with the markets is every time they see a little bit of an indication that things might be getting better, they go crazy. And each time they've gotten disappointed when the Fed ends up having another big rate increase. So we saw one of the governors of the Federal Reserve Board, his name's Christopher Waller, say, hey, don't get too enthusiastic too fast. Although he was predicting that this time in their December meeting, they'll probably only be increasing rates by 0.5 percentage point, which is actually quite a bit slower than they've been doing the last 6 times they've raised interest rates by 0.75% increase. So this really seems to be indicating that maybe we're starting to come to the end of this crisis. Good news for everybody, I think. Frankly, I think that it's the type of thing that maybe we might be finally starting to get a breath of fresh air in that regard.
Well, Michael, I've been told we're having some technical issues at Master Control. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a very brief break. We'll come back and we'll continue on with this conversation in just a moment. You're watching and listening to the Megacast. Continuing on, Michael, while inflation continues to be combated through several severe measures here in the U.S., particularly the rising of the interest rate so far, 6 times in the UK. Inflation now at a 41-year high as recession over there is looming. And that's a market that's closely connected to the US. They're a close ally of ours. And we've talked about that before, about the messiness in the United Kingdom. How could a recession there indicate potential forecasts for the future here in the US, given the impact inflation's having on our economy?
Yeah, well, they're kind of in a different situation because right now all of Europe is really grappling with the fact that they've got major problems with the energy supply as a result of the Russian invasion into Ukraine. Now, that has impacted the global price of energy, but here in the United States, we're kind of protected from that a little bit simply because of the fact that we're a huge energy producer, and our number one source of imported energy is, frankly, Canada, who's not going to be really impacted by the invasion of Ukraine either. So we're in much better shape here in the United States than they are in Europe. In Europe, though, they're really in trouble. They're facing potentially a cold winter with rapidly increasing energy costs. And in fact, the irony is that the inflation in England would have been much, much worse had it not been for the fact that the British already announced that there's going to be a cap on the price of energy that's basically being enforced by the government. So were it not for that, you'd actually be seeing a much larger increase in inflation in the UK. In the United States, though, as I say, it seems like we've got a lot of good indications. You know, the many of the supply chain issues seem to have really been resolved. It seems like the economy is slowing down just a little bit, hopefully just enough that we're starting to see inflation go down. Stores now do seem to have a lot of inventory. So that means that there's going to be less upward pressure as people compete to get the few goods that are available on the shelves. So my hope is that we'll be able to avoid it hurting us too much. But, you know, you just can't escape these things flowing over from one country to the next anywhere in the world, given how interconnected our economy is, and especially between here in the United States and the UK and Europe. So my guess is we're going to see a pretty severe recession potentially in the UK. We're also going to see a recession, my guess is, in Europe, hopefully not quite as severe as in the UK. But you have to remember, especially since the UK left the European Union as a result of Brexit, it's actually a relatively small economy on the global scale. So although it's a major trading partner, or at least one of its major trading partners is the United States, for us, it's still a relatively small trading partner. So the hope is that their economic problems really won't flow over and impact us too severely, although it's inevitable that there will be some impact.
We're joined by Michael Greiner on today's edition of the Megacast from Oakland University for our weekly market talk. And as we talk about where the U.S. goes in terms of battling inflation, where our economy is at, that also heavily impacts the United States and their debt. And with the results of the election being what they were just a little over a week ago, now we are in a state of divided government in Washington, with the House of Representatives going back to the Republican Party, the Senate as of now remaining in Democratic power, and of course the White House also in Democratic power. But that also means an impact could be seen on the debt ceiling here in the U.S., and that can also have some significant not just political impacts, but economic impacts. How is the Biden administration, this Treasury Department, considering that in the future, and what measures they may be able to take if the House of Representatives, with its Republican majority next year, refuses to raise the debt ceiling or is using that as a political tool?
Yeah, I got to tell you, this is something that really outrages me, and frankly outrages most economists, and even for that matter, most business people. Because the reality is that when we're talking about the debt ceiling, up until about 20 years ago or so, this was just a no big deal issue where the debt ceiling would be kind of raised as a matter of course on a bipartisan basis. Nobody ever really made a big deal about it. And about 20 years ago, it started to kind of become a political football. You know, I'm not going to cast aspersions at one party or the other. There's probably plenty of blame to go around. But the bottom line is, that certainly it has become a political football. And back in 2011, actually, there became such a big battle over it that we endured a government shutdown, of course. Many people have probably remembered a number of these government shutdowns. And Standard & Poor's actually lowered the rating for the United States debt that gets issued. Now, to most people, when you think of debt, you think, oh, going to the bank. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about bonds. When you think of savings bonds or treasury bonds, those are basically debts that are issued by the United States government to fund either large investments or to fund its operations. And the reality is that really we've been going deeper and deeper into debt since about the year 2000. And really, the increases in debt date back to about the year 1980. But the 1990s, for a variety of reasons, actually, we experienced a surplus in our budget. That's the last time we did so. So as a result of that, there was less debt that was accumulated. But certainly since about 2001 or so, the United States has been going deeper and deeper into debt. You know, at some times we're going more quickly into debt, at sometimes less quickly into debt. But the bottom line is we've been increasing our debt because of the fact that we're spending money more quickly than it comes into the Treasury. Now, there are debates as to how critical this is and how much of a long-term issue this really is, because part of the advantage that the United States has in incurring debt is, number one, we have what's called the reserve currency in the dollar, which is that everybody in the world uses a dollar. Wherever you are in the world, if you've got a United States dollar, it's basically accepted as currency on par value. So that's a real strength that the United States dollar has, contrary to most currencies, which, you know, I'd challenge anybody to try to take a Japanese yen or a Russian ruble, for that matter, into a store here in the United States and try to use it. Probably wouldn't get very good result. But here, if you take a US dollar, literally anywhere in the world, you can use it on a par value basis. So that's a real advantage that the United States has. In fact, about 60% of our currency is actually located overseas because of the fact that it is so heavily relied upon as a foreign trade medium, essentially. And so that's one advantage that we have, that people always want dollars. And that's part of the reason, by the way, why the dollar right now is so strong relative to other currencies, and that it's kind of a currency that people feel is secure in this time of really a lot of uncertainty going on around in the world, with China having economic problems, with Europe having economic problems, with the UK, as we discussed, having economic problems, with Russia invading Ukraine and the ruble in big trouble, with there being big inflation, which really is not being managed very well in Turkey. So everybody around the world is looking for a safe haven for their investments, and they're seeing dollars as being that location. So that's a real advantage that we have. So number one, people are willing to accept dollars as payment for the debt. Number two, most debt around the world, including all of our debt, is denominated in dollars as a result of that. So essentially, we create the money that gets used to pay back the debts that we incur. Now, there is a risk with that, which of course we're dealing with right now, which is inflation, where people are always concerned that, you know, if you print too much money, then it reduces the value of each dollar, and then you get into inflation. But the reality is we're quite a bit of a distance from that concern. And generally speaking, U.S. policymakers, including the Fed, where they set monetary policy, have been very conservative in terms of how we, quote unquote, print money. And really the tightening that we're dealing with right now is a great example of that. Finally, the fact is that, again, because of so much chaos going around in the world, people still want to buy U.S. debt. So we're able to sell it at a very low interest rate. And the U.S. economy, despite the issues we've been dealing with, continues to grow. And so as a result of the fact that it's growing, as long as the debt remains below a certain percentage of our gross domestic product, which it still is, then we essentially keep growing at a rate that we're basically outgrowing the amount of debt we have. Now, the concern is if that kind of reverses, then that could be an issue. But that's really not a major concern in the short run, at least. The bigger issue, though, is that if Congress can't get along well enough to at least pass these debt limit increases, which, as I say, used to be just a administrative process that was passed on a bipartisan basis with really no controversy at all, then we could see people maybe getting scared and saying, well, maybe we shouldn't be investing in U.S. securities. And if that happens, then suddenly it could become much more expensive for America to borrow money, which means that we'll be spending more of our federal budget on just paying interest costs rather than paying back the actual debts that we owe or paying for ongoing expenses that the government has. That's one downside. And then the bigger downside, though, in some respects, is the fact that because of the fact that the US dollar is such a globally respected currency, as I say, it's the global reserve currency at this point. If the globe gets concerned about the viability of our dollar because of the fact that we're not paying our debts as we should be, then all of a sudden you could see literally a global catastrophe occur where you suddenly get into a situation where from one country to another, they don't know how to deal with trade because they can't rely upon that value of being able to go into a store anywhere in the world, show them $1 and get paid for it. So that really is the big concern is, are we going to be able to continue to have the dollar as the global reserve currency when you see such dysfunction going on in Congress? And my hope is that cooler heads will prevail, that they'll be able to get past this and not use this really very basic administrative procedure, which really all it represents is just paying the debts we've already incurred. These are things where we've already paid for them and we just need to pay the debt. And if we can't continue to borrow the money to pay the debts, then all of a sudden we get ourselves into a government shutdown situation and we endanger our currency. And these are really major, major concerns, which I think everybody across the country should be really concerned about.
Well, Michael, we appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us as always to talk about the state of the market, the state of our economy as we continue to deal with these issues in a variety of different ways, not just here in Michigan and in the U.S., but worldwide. Thank you very much.
Happy to be here. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
You as well. More information on Oakland University programs can be found at oakland.edu. Oakland.edu is their website. We'll take a very short break. On the other side, when we come back, we will talk to Richard Carson, the founder and the CEO of Health and Safety for All Foundation. You're watching and listening to the Megacast.
My Michigan TV is streaming everywhere on Apple TV, Roku, Fire TV, and more smart TV apps. My Michigan TV is on your phone too. Take us with you wherever you go. Just search for My Michigan TV on your favorite app store or visit mymitv.com. All Michigan, streaming everywhere. My Michigan TV.
Can I ask you a question? Why do you want to get the COVID-19 vaccine?
I don't like getting sick. The virus will die. It will be easy to not catch it. Keep my family safe and keep playing soccer. Because I love being vaccinated.
What's your hope for everyone?
I hope everybody gets the vaccine to keep safe and strong. Be like happy, having fun everywhere. Everyone stay safe and hope you get the vaccine.
Wondering what to say to someone who's been sexually assaulted or abused?
I believe you. I'm so sorry this happened.
It's not your fault.
Confidential and anonymous help is available at the Michigan Sexual Assault Hotline. Connect with us 24/7. Call 855-VOICES-4 or text 1-866-238-1454 for help. Learn more at michigan.gov/voices4.
What's happening around you? Hear about state events, businesses, and from the people behind them on the Megacast, an hour-long TV, radio, and streaming show keeping you informed on the day-to-day news. Listen in on talks with volunteer groups, documentarians, and financial advisors, Monday to Friday with your host, Tyler Kieft. Catch the Megacast weekdays from 10 a.m. to 11 on Civic Center TV, 89.3 Lakes FM, and streaming on mymytv.com.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live daily TV, radio, and streaming show about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Our apologies, technical difficulties have put us just a little bit behind time, so let's quickly continue on today. Joining us now on the program is one of over 300 charities, nonprofits supported on the Shared Detroit platform. Richard Carson is the founder and CEO of the Health and Safety for All Foundation and joins us now. Richard, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate having you on with us today. If you could tell us first just the history and the mission of your organization.
Well, the history is I'm a person that has suffered from a chronic disease for over 20 years, have had been on dialysis for 7.5 years, had 2 kidney transplants. So I understood better than most how important it is to be proactive instead of reactive with our healthcare. And that's what made me start the nonprofit, is to be able to raise funds and raise awareness of how important it is to be more proactive, and especially in our community, and with men are sometimes hesitant to go to doctors. So I wanted to be able to provide tools that will give people the opportunity and really spur them on to go ahead and again, be more proactive than reactive with healthcare.
And so what's some of the information, or what are some of the resources that you do provide to these individuals, to these communities, to help them be, as you said, more proactive with healthcare?
Well, one of the main programs I do as a certified life coach and health coach, I do the CDC diabetes prevention program. So what we do is we work with individuals for about a year, and we provide them with tools to help them to achieve the goals, which are to lose at least 5 to 7% of their initial body weight and increase their activity to at least 150 minutes per week by the time they complete the program at the end of that year.
We're joined by Richard Carson on today's edition of the Megacast. He is the founder and the CEO of the Health and Safety for All Foundation. You can find more information on their website, healthandsafetyforall.org. Healthandsafetyforall.org is their website. You can also find them on Share Detroit's website, sharedetroit.org. If you search under Find a Nonprofit, you'll find them in over 320 other charities and nonprofits all across the state of Michigan as well. sharedetroit.org. In terms of getting access to these resources, Richard, how can people sign up to gain access to some of these resources, as well as participate in some of the many training and other programs that you provide?
Well, of course, like you mentioned, we are on the Share Detroit site, so we can be communicated through there. We also can go through our healthandsafetyforall.org website, or you can give us a call at 877-553-0811. So you can learn a lot more about what we do and what we're trying to achieve through those 3 communication sites.
Again, that phone number, 877-553-0811, 877-553-0811. One of the programs that you're running through the Health and Safety for All Foundation is the Stop the Bleed program. Tell us about that program and why this is such an important effort from your organization.
Absolutely. One of the things, and let me preface this by saying, I wish that there wasn't a need for the Stop the Bleed program. But unfortunately, we've seen time and time again that we have had these traumatic, devastating events where there has been mass casualties, and then people their lives have been saved through the efforts of the Stop the Bleed. Because if you're able to react quickly to a tragedy, and you're able to stop bleeding, the quicker you're able to stop bleeding from someone who is bleeding profusely, it increases their chances of living through that trauma exponentially. So it's been something we've been working with for the last couple of years, and it's just vital. And again, I wish we didn't have to have it, but it's better to be prepared in case eventuality of some type of mass casualty event does occur.
You can also find more information about the Stop the Bleed Coalition by visiting Health and Safety for All Foundation's website, healthandsafetyforall.org, healthandsafetyforall.org. They also have a link there to the Stop the Bleed podcast, too, with a lot more information as well. Joining us on the Megacast right now is Richard Carson, the founder and CEO of the Health and Safety for All Foundation, one of over 300 charities and nonprofits supported by the Share Detroit platform at sharedetroit.org. especially in underserved communities where educational resources may not be as substantial or may not include health and safety training or even first aid training. I mean, when we talk about natural disasters or other disasters that have a lot of people that are affected, that first aid training can be so important. How much of a immense help is it to have resources like this organization serving in underserved communities to provide a bridge to the gaps that are there in health and safety training?
It's very important. In fact, another training that we do provide is the CPR, first aid, AED training. It's very important. The quicker you can act in the eventuality of some type of traumatic event, the more likely that the person is going to survive that event. We also work with a product, our Life Back product, that is really been proven to increase the odds of someone who is choking and surviving, in case there's someone that isn't familiar with how to extricate a choking victim, having something in their throat, have it extricated. We have a device that is good for that as well. But it's all about time. The quicker you react and the less time that they're in distress, the more likely they are to survive.
Just another 1 minute or so left with you today, Richard. So before we let you go, what is one more thing that you wish, or one thing that you wish across the board that more people knew or more people understood about being health and safety aware, or at the very least, first aid, CPR aware?
Well, I think that one, we as a society, unfortunately, we suffer dramatically from all these events more than many other communities. And it's important for us to have the skills to be able to apply the techniques, the proven techniques that save lives. It's just undeniable that the more skill you have and the ability to move more quickly and help that person that's in distress, the more likely survival is.
More information and resources, as well as information on training programs, can be found on their website, healthandsafetyforall.org, healthandsafetyforall.org, or call them 877-553-0811, 877-553-0811. Richard, thank you so much for joining us today.
Tyler, thank you for the invitation. I look forward to seeing you again.
Yes, you as well. Healthandsafetyforall.org or sharedetroit.org for more information. That will do it for this week's editions of the Megacast. We'll return very soon with new programs.